We are live now, and I will now make the post on photos worth seeing. I will make the post on photos worth seeing so that the post is out now in case Dr. Fern wants to reblog it to Luxlit or wherever. And I think we're running 30 seconds on. Let's wait a couple of seconds. I can sing. I won't, because if I do, people would leave the stream immediately for a reason. So 2 viewers already on the stream. So let's start, and I have to find the right button. How to start? So I don't know if this time we heard music. I heard it, but that's no Fern. You can talk, Fern.
I can talk.
It's fine. You can talk now. Fern is being funny, by the way. Hello, everyone to InConversation 33.
Oh,
29th
this time we heard music.
20, and someone has apparently a browser window open because I heard myself, an echo of myself. Also, hello to the chat so far. Amy Montico is on the chat and writes, please, no singing. No, I won't. Don't worry, Amy. And without further ado, let's first welcome our guest today. Second time on the show, Christina Krause. I tried to pronounce your name the way you probably pronounce it and not the way I would pronounce it, even though it's a German name. Christina Krause. Christina Krause. Rats and Radish Photography on Tumblr.com. In the unlikely case you're not aware that Christina's blog is on Tumblr. Amazing photography and an amazing person. So welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining. Also on the show, as usual, today eating Zombie Bob's pizza. Fernando. All things Fern on Tumblr, admin of Luxlit.net. As usual. And hello, Steph, also on the chat. And well, like always, hello, James Chrisley on the chat as well. You can, if you want to, talk with us, chat with us during the live stream. And I hope you do, because today we're going to talk about a very, very fascinating topic. We're going to talk about photo editing. So, what editing really is in the first place, because editing, first and foremost, without touching sliders, without clicking buttons, is choosing which photos to use from a shooting. That is the basic of editing. And we're also going to talk about, especially since we are on social media even right now, right? um, some ideas how we do it. Maybe we're even going to show some examples, which photos we choose, or which possibilities we have, which ideas go into choosing photos to post to social media. So my name's Pete. I like pictures, but you know that, right? So Fernando, no, yeah, I leave the stage now for a moment. I mute myself because it was your idea, and I love the topic. So Fern.
Oh, so okay. So I stopped eating pizza, although it is fun. Um, so the whole thing came to be because well, first of all, because honestly, I put out the announcement for another round of photo critiques, and nobody submitted anything, which is fine. But what was really interesting was there was interest. There were like 49 likes and comments and reblogs, and so there were 49 notes, but there were no submissions. And I'm like, what's the disconnect here? So I think maybe us, Pete and I, and actually when Chris joined us, when Dr. Kraus joined us the last time, because she's been with us once before, we actually each looked at some of our photographs. So actually, it's really, I didn't think of it until now, but I think it's really just a great part of the process that maybe we don't really think about. And also, David Duchemin, who posts on YouTube, although he hasn't done it for a while, and who has these online courses, which I've signed up for too. He had one of the lessons was, here's 7 point, choose 7 pictures, and then here's questions to answer about your picture. Why did you share this photograph? Why do you think this photograph is worth setting free into the world? And to me, I mean, that's a huge part of the whole process, and it's actually a huge part of what we were talking about, really, for teaching media and so on, especially visual media. The critiquing of it is crucial, and understanding media as a media user, it's also critical. So anyway, it's some heavy, deep shit, because that's what I studied and that's what I like. And so that's the bottom line of what we're going to be doing now, hopefully. And just talking in general about the process of choosing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
No, I know it makes sense to you, but Pete's looking like he's lost.
No,
But I'm
no, no, no,
talking,
no.
so he's always looking that way.
Makes sense to me. I just ask myself, especially because I really think this is a twofold topic, right? There's one thing from when we're out shooting, right, or on a shoot or whatever, choosing which photos are what we might think the best. And I feel like, I mean, depending on what we take photos of or for, the process can be super different,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was just thinking about I had and I thought about showing them here, but but I would have had to ask for permission, and I didn't do that because I thought it would just simply wouldn't be right, because it was a kind of a personal thing. A friend of mine, or friends of mine, 2 close friends of mine had asked for photos of their baby, right? So of course
Oh,
we did that, right? So we went there, took photos, and sitting there with, because take I never took photos of a kid. Well, twice in my life, 3 times maybe, but that counts as never, right? So I'm not really, this is not really my how can I put that? My
your
my
hand.
comfort zone, let's put it like that, right? So of course it was rather a spray and pray situation, right? You just take tons and tons and tons of photos, and then you sit there. Of course there are photos out of focus, blurred, whatever, that you throw away, but then you have like 10 photos of a cute baby, and all look kind of nice, right? And all are cute because the baby is cute, of course it is, but you don't want to give like 200 photos that with 50 photos looking almost exactly the same. So thinking about that, sitting there, and think which are the photos that I like best, of course, to a degree, because you want to show what always kind of want to show what represents you as a photographer as well, right? Even in a situation like that, when you do it something for friends. And on the other hand, you think about what do I think that they might like best. So, and this is one thing, and the other thing is when we take photos and we choose photos that are where we expect kind of a reaction, and there are 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 comparatively similar photos, and finding the one, there's a leaf, like, in my case, mostly a landscape photographer, right? Nature photographer. There's the leaf showing this side and the other one that side. Exaggeration, of course, but it's not so easy, right? So the one thing is just throwing away everything that just simply doesn't work from a sheer technical standpoint, and then finding the one photo out of 5 that look very similar, that represents what you wanted to do, or what you sometimes you don't even know what you do. You just take photos and then you sit there with 500 photos. So this is the thought. How can we go about this? Is a really very, very interesting question for me, and so I'm glad to be able to hear what you have to say about that, right?
So
So I want to learn.
I have a question for Chris, actually, when you mentioned the spray and pray, because I rarely do that. And a lot of times I will actually just take one picture of something, especially if it's something fixed. Uh, yeah, I mean, when I was in LA in July, the Disney Center, there were several pictures. I mean, I've taken pictures of it before, and several of the pictures were almost exactly like the ones before. Um, but I took just one, maybe two. That's it. And even with people, I tend to do that. Although with people, there's usually motion and that kind of thing. I mean, I don't do professional photography. So how do you, Chris? Because you have these wonderful, these glorious everyday tableaus of life, pretty much a lot of times. The empty office the other day, which I'm sure is from Joe's office.
Yeah.
Do you do that? Do you take a lot of pictures? That's my question, of the same thing, or do you just take one and go, oh, fuck it, whatever. If it comes out, it comes out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Which is what I often do.
No, I take a couple. It's a bit of the pray and spray, because sometimes, I mean, I'm getting used to a new camera now, and it's a lot more sensitive to motion. So because I don't have things set up on a tripod, I will take a couple just to make sure that, there isn't one that's going to turn out very blurry. And with the office photo, it was a very low light setting. So even though I've got a camera that is good with low light, it's still, just to be on the safe side. But I do understand what Pete's talking about in terms of other people asking you, to do something, because I was trailing my friend to the horse barn where she boards her horse. And yeah, that's one of the recent photos that I've done. And one of the other women there saw my photos of that I had taken of some of the horses in the barn. I think there's one further down that you'll see that's kind of like the back end of a horse, and just the way the light was hitting it, and the rest of the stall was dark. Yeah, I think it's a bit further down. And
that one.
a little further down. Anyway, so this woman had a cult that she wanted me to take pictures of. And I don't do photo shoots. These are things that I do for myself. So again, it was that question, like, well, how do I know that I'm going to capture? Yeah, there's one of those photos. How do I know that I'm going to capture something that she wants? Because when I'm taking a picture, I'm in a completely different place. You know, I'm just seeing through my eyes only and not trying to see through mine and hers, you know, to anticipate what she might want, like you might do when you're taking a picture of somebody's kid. So I don't really know that this is what she wants. I mean, this is something that when I'm in a certain place in a certain time and the light is a certain way, that's when the photo happens. So it's an unplanned, very kind of Zen experience for me. And I didn't know if I'd be able to kind of force that in creating things that, you know, she might want of her particular horse. So, I mean, it never happened. I referred her to a commercial photographer who does that for a living pretty much. But again, you know, it's, yeah, I mean, after you take the picture, then there's the whole editing part of it, you know, like what, you know, what part are you going to focus on? What part are you leaving there? What are you taking out? So I don't know if that answers your question, Fern. I mean, for me, it's just being there and seeing what's in front of you.
Yeah, no,
You
totally.
know, whether you take one shot of it or whether you take a couple, it's, you know, you're still trying to capture the one thing that has kind of engaged your attention.
And you might move, I don't know about either one of you or anybody else, but you might move a little here, at least I do. I will move a little here, a little there, and maybe, you know, but the bottom line is, it's like Pete said, it's like the leaf is this way or this way, you know, which way, you know, is it go, or maybe the leaf is here and it's now here. It's not even a this thing, maybe it's just
Yeah.
but yeah, the bottom line is it's the Zen experience. Although I have to say, and I was looking at one of the choices that I wanted to make for today, and I didn't choose it, but it's a photograph of some ducks in Oakland that were on a pond, and I took some pictures, and it's all these black ducks, and then it's like this white duck or swan, wherever. And I took these pictures, and I only took 3 or 4, but I saw them, which rarely happens. I saw them in black and white. I saw the Escher effect that I thought I wanted to try and get, which I think I did a little. But again, that's rare for me, and it's that, oh well, whatever, you know.
I think part of it's planning and part of it's happenstance, you know, and then the rest of it, you know, can happen in the editing process.
In the processing, yeah, totally. And that's, to me, I mean, that's why I think of it as a conversation of the whole thing, because that's where the pictures tell me, oh yes, keep me, no, just dump my ass, which I do. I dump the bad pictures. Or this is, you know, having a conversation where eventually the picture and I agree, this is how you're going to look.
Yeah.
And this is how you want to look. And it might not have been what I saw originally, because again, that's the other thing, you know, I've always, and I think I've said this before, I've always been fascinated by the whole idea of the challenge, you know, take a picture every day challenge or do this challenge. And I'm sitting there going, listen, when I pick up the camera and I turn it on, that from that moment of doing the on, that's the challenge already. Constantly. Yeah. That's the wonder. And I mean, that's just me maybe, but you know, whether I'll never shoot film again, because it was horrible for me, and I didn't develop my own. But yeah, nice when it works. That's totally it. It's just the whole thing is just how are you going to surprise me? You know, what's going to happen? And it's the fun. It's the fun because it's never the same. I have to ask you, what camera did you get?
Oh, 5D. Joe promised me when I finished my dissertation, he was going to get me a full frame. So it's a Canon 5D.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah, I've actually had the Daniel who joined us a while back. He shoots with I don't know if he still does, with a 5D, and I have to say I was totally floored when we were looking at some of his files, and it's just astounding. It's just, but when you get to that level, really, you know, 2 of one, 5 of the other, or what is it, 12 of one, a dozen of the other, they're all pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, do you want to talk about, or do you want to share your process of choosing?
Mine?
Yeah, either one of
Uh,
you.
Well, yeah, sure. Because I do get a lot of questions from people that want to know how I get the results that I've gotten. And the choosing is obviously the initial. You pick up the camera, you take the picture, and then you're looking through things. And it's not something that's cut and dried. A lot of it depends. Uh, just to say that it is, first of all, the technical stuff. If it's blurry, if it's whatever, then that's gone. So that's like the first cut. But after that, I think it's a matter of how does the image resonate with me, and is this something that I want to take to the next step or not? Because it's interesting. I've noticed that when I go back and look at pictures that I've taken, like maybe a year ago, that would be one of them. I have a different relationship with them when I go back and look at them again, as opposed to where I was in the moment when I took them. And sometimes I will see something that I didn't see then. So I tend to hold on to some of my older pictures and go back and look through, because there are the ones that grab me in the moment because that's where I was. And then other ones that it's like, well, I think I missed something. I think sometimes I get overwhelmed by looking at all of my own imagery that I really have to stop, walk away, and then go back and look at things. But once I decide what it is that, that this is it, this is the image that's going to be moving forward, then, I go through what editing I need to do. And I try to work on not over editing. People ask about the dark backgrounds that I use, and I try to get that first and foremost through exposure compensation. I tend to shoot things in strong light that already have a dark background, or sometimes I put up a dark background behind it. Just because
Really?
sometimes I will do that.
Oh, 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 God.
Why?
Oh, oh,
Is
oh.
that painful? What's going on?
I'm-
Sometimes it is that simple,
Yeah.
Huh?
Fern. Sometimes it's that
Sometimes it is that.
simple.
No, sometimes it is that simple, and I totally get that,
Yeah.
and that's what makes it. I mean, look at that. I mean, there's touches. I mean, and not every photograph's a winner.
Mhm.
And actually, the two pictures that I chose to share, one of them, yeah, no, totally, is one that got meh, pretty much a meh reaction,
Mhm.
but to me is still indicative of exactly what it is that I do today, as far as my urban geometry and a lot of the
Mhm.
other photographs that I do. I mean, look at that. But again, you also put the background behind it and stuff like that. I just pretty much shoot as is, but it winds up being the same. And the whole over processing thing. I mean, it's a whole part of the conversation. I
Yeah.
don't. God. Oh my God. Oh.
That was leaving a company picnic at Knott's Berry Farm.
Oh wow.
I just happened to turn around and see that as we were leaving the park, and it's right there.
So let me ask both of you, because I love that. I'm looking at these and I remember them. I mean, that's the kind of impact.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at that. That's just fucking genius. Do you two have to, how do I put this? When you're making your choices for for what to stop it, Pete, for what to or what to reblog, or what to post, or what to share. In other words, what passes as a good photograph? Because really, that's what we're talking about. What, in my opinion, passes as a good photograph? Um, do you find that because you sort of you pointed to that? Um, do you find that part of what you have to grapple with and deal with is the moment that you saw it and that excitement of the zen of taking the picture, as opposed to whether the quality is actually there. Does that make sense?
Can you say that again? I'm not sure.
So in other words, for me, a lot of times, especially with my portraits, with my people pictures, as I like to think of, I will sometimes remember, oh wow, this was such a great moment, and this yada yada, and that I have to be careful doesn't influence what I see in the photo. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be just the people photographs. I mean, I'm thinking now, for example, when I was in Spain and I took a photograph of, well, actually in Munich too, when we were at the park, the Olympic Park, and some of the pictures got great reactions and kudos, but some of them, but I kept looking at, well, these are pictures of people that I shared, the ones with when you and Joe and I were at the march a couple of years ago. Those were, it was the march, it was the fact that y'all were there, you know what I mean? So I need to separate that from what I'm seeing and focus on, is this not even technically, is it just a picture that speaks to me as a photograph alone? Does that make sense? And do y'all grapple with that?
Well, I guess for me, when I sit down to look at a photograph, the personal experience with it is secondary, because I start looking at it, I think, as a composition, as a, I mean, there are, pictures that are personal for me, and then they're kind of in a different category. Although they can, the ones that do get, out in public, they can occupy both those spaces. But I think when I sit down to look at something in front of me, I'm looking at it more as the artist, and not the person who's friends with the person that I took the picture. Especially if it's something that's going out into an arena that's representing, my art, what I do. So some of those make it, some of them don't. I mean, I took a lot of pictures, when we were at the march as well. And there were a lot that kind of fell by the wayside because it didn't feel like they were at the level of what I wanted them to be. So again, I picked and chose which ones that I wanted to put out there, which is usually just a handful compared to the amount of pictures that you can take. So
what about you, Pete?
Well, for me, when being there, and this doesn't matter what kind of photography it is, when being there, when looking through the viewfinder, this is one element, right? And that's the deciding element whether I take a photo or not. Before that is, I don't look. There are people who search for photos by looking through the viewfinder, by looking at the display on their cameras. I don't do that. I look. I don't look through the camera. I use it to frame what I saw before. That's just my approach. I don't say this is a good approach. It's just my approach. And this is when I decide whether to take a photo or not. I decide before I even look through the viewfinder how I want the photo to look like. And I make the settings. Then I'll check through the viewfinder. And this, for me, actually, this is because you mentioned it before, Fern, the switch from a DSLR to mirrorless systems, etc. I don't know whether this was on while we were on already, because we briefly talked about the change in technology and the change from, because whatever, I don't want to go into that now, right now. The thing is, I still shoot with a DSLR, with my Canon EOS 90D, and I actually enjoy. And I don't say this is better or worse or whatever. This is just my approach. I enjoy looking through the viewfinder and only deciding on the composition. I don't even want to see in that moment how the photo will look like later in the
Mhm.
picture, because I decided that already before I even looked through the viewfinder. And I know my camera good enough so that I can make the settings so that at least it will show up similar to what I expected. And then I take the photo, and then I'm guilty of chimping. I chimp all of the time, right?
Really?
I do that all of the time, taking photo, looking. But it's actually it's not checking the composition because I saw the composition before.
Mhm.
It's rather checking whether the colors are right and whether the exposure is right. And I need
Really?
for that. Yeah, I'm a chimper, definitely.
That's called chimping.
It's called
You know
I
why?
heard that term a
But
lot.
you know why? So
So
I
chimping is taking a photo and immediately looking
Mhm.
at the display whether the photo turned out the way.
but you know the history of that. When digital first started, a lot of the apparently the pros who were using it because they were the ones who could afford the more expensive cameras would would sit there and take a look and go ooh 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 and
Oh,
all.
right. Yeah, let's see. I don't I'm with me, it's rather meh.
That's the
So
story
it's
I read somewhere. I
so
can't remember
and
where
then after
exactly, but it
after I
made
took
perfect sense.
yeah, after I took the shot, then the next step for me, when I see the photos on my computer after I imported them to my
Mhm.
computer and look at them and on the bigger screen, bigger than on my camera, I'm completely disconnected to the shooting. This is a completely different thing for
Mhm.
me. I see the photos. These are photos then. This is not I'm not in the process of taking photos again. For me, the process of taking a shot with the camera is a completely different one than looking at the photos later on my computer. While I'm there, it's a I enjoy taking photos. I enjoy making the settings. I enjoyed, but then it's done for me. This is for me in that moment. Check, gone.
Mhm.
And then later, looking at the photos, I look at them in a completely different way. And this is even, I think, to an extent, based on my training, because I have to look at footage of any sort, right? Completely emotionally detached.
Yeah,
So
you know.
I look at it from a sheer, is that photo, does it work or doesn't it work? And
Mhm.
if it works, then and whether it works, of course, what we talked before, is it in focus? Is the composition okay? And for me, it was a quantum leap. I cannot stress it enough that my 90D that I got in December now has a 100% viewfinder. So finally, I see the whole photo in the viewfinder, which wasn't the case with my cameras before. They just showed me a smaller crop in the viewfinder, which is and now I've finally seen. I could go back. This is one of the great things about the 90D. It has a 100% viewfinder. So
So wait,
um,
does it have an electronic viewfinder, or is it
no,
still?
it, it's not no, it's a real viewfinder. So no electronic viewfinder. I look through the lens. It's a DSLR.
So you really can't see? Because I'll tell you honestly, that I feel the same way you do about that. My electronic viewfinder days. Now that I can see, you know, the depth of field and everything in the viewfinder,
I don't have that.
yeah, no, I used to not have that, and it was fine, and I agree with you. But now that I have it, so I
Oh, I
understand.
see. I know what, yeah, but I could have it in I could I just have to look on the display, right? I can switch to the display and I have the same I have
Uh,
all the features that an electronic viewfinder has.
but
It's
you
just
have to
a
look at
bigger
this
display.
at the larger.
Yeah, right. So
Uh,
and this is it even has, and this is the great thing. I don't want to advertise for this camera, but it has a couple of features that are only when you shoot via the display, right? When you shoot via, it has like eye tracking and all that, and it's pretty brilliant eye tracking, but it's only possible via live view. So for me, this is kind of the best of both worlds, and because also something we talked briefly before we went live, right? It's probably probably indeed time to move on with technology. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, I bought that camera. I love that camera, absolutely adore that camera. But and in December when I bought it, it was, for me, it was totally clear, absolutely clear. It has to be that camera, and I'm glad that I bought it. But now, if I were to buy a camera now, I probably wouldn't buy a DSLR anymore, but I would switch to mirrorless.
Yeah.
Pretty sure about that.
So just so everybody knows, and
Topic.
if I didn't post it on LuxLit, I will. The conversation that Pete and I had before, and even before you joined us, Chris, was that Matt Granger, who is on YouTube and has been known as the Nikon guy for several years, because of the coronavirus and the fact that he's really not taking any pictures, and because his equipment was at, there's cycles in especially in his case, he's running a business where the equipment needed to be was up for renewal very soon. He just sold all of his Nikon or Nikon equipment, all of it. And he is now pretty much cameraless. I know he has a couple of other cameras that he uses, but really, he is going to build up his equipment from the ground up using mirrorless. And for now, at least, and this was just a couple of days ago that he posted this, he is not making any choices. He's going to explore because, like Pete said, he feels that now is the time when the mirrorless technology is mature enough where you can make those choices. You have enough of the camera choices, of the lens choices, and so on that are native lenses, because to him that's very important. I happen to agree. But I will say, Pete, as much as I love my Sony, and I've said this a million times, and actually the two pictures I chose were pictures I took with my D50, with my baby, which I still to this day absolutely adore, and it's now a 12-year-old camera, which I don't have anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's just that's interesting. That whole I mean, I look at almost all of my photographs when I'm editing them, even when because that's another thing I've learned to wait a couple of days. I mean, I'll go in and go through and maybe just dump a whole bunch of files that suck immediately. But when I'm going to start doing the actual processing of the photograph itself, and do the editing and highlights and so on and so forth, I still go back to that moment in Spain, that moment in LA, that moment in Seattle just recently.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
To me, that's always a part of it. So
Can I chime in there? Maybe I worded that wrong when I said that. Just to make this clear, I don't mean that I don't, when I look at my photos, that I'm not in the moment anymore. But when I'm choosing which photo to use, then for me it's really, I detach myself. I really see just the photo, and I don't emotionally engage with the photos anymore.
well, no, for me, the choosing, the initial choosing, good or bad photograph, that's easy. That's detached. But once I get into the adjusting the settings and adjusting the color, or then, and I start getting into the photograph itself, and having that conversation with the file, then I do have to be very careful about not letting that memory overpower my choices. And that's why I think of it as a conversation with the file itself, because that's then me going, okay, yes, I remember how great I felt when I was shooting this, but the bottom line is, what do you as an image, what do you have for me, basically? That's what it is.
I think this is so important because that way, if we can take that step back, we allow the photos to breathe, and we allow ourselves to see more in the shot than what we felt or saw at that very moment. We allow ourselves, and it's the same when different people look at the same photo or read the same book or watch the same movie. They get a slightly different experience, some even a largely different experience out of that. And so allowing ourselves to do that by taking that step back or trying to not have the moment that we were in at that moment when we took the photo to influence us too much, or even, well, wrong, I have to correct myself, allowing ourselves to let this moment that we were in influence us, but also allow ourselves to not let it influence us,
Yes.
because these are
So
two different things. So keeping all options open, I think that's not only a cool thing because we can come up with different photos, it's also a learning process, so for ourselves to see different things in our own photos.
Mhm.
yes. So Pete so rarely says stuff that's really intelligent that this comment of his deserves a me eating pizza moment. That was yes. That
Let me
was very good. That's yes.
let
That's
me just
right.
let me just catch up with the chat
Yes,
bot,
Pete.
and with the writes, oops, sorry. Just personal preference, but I absolutely hate shooting by looking at the screen.
Yeah, I
I
need.
feel you, bud. Sometimes it comes in like Amy wrote, it comes in very handy when shooting at weird angles. And also when, like in my case, for example, the camera allows me to have different features. And sometimes, yeah, so I can do stuff with the live view that I can't do when not using the live view. So it's a tool, and we have to learn the camera.
That's it. That's it. That's
Mhm.
it. And that's
James,
always. But I only use LCD when
James,
using tripod.
yeah,
Oh, that's
James writes, but I only use the LCD when using a tripod. I turn image review off so I don't chimp. Well, yeah.
so.
So
I have to. I've never mentioned this before, but it's really. I rarely ever chimp, but I do check the composition because sometimes, and I don't know if it's just me, but forever, and this is even when I had SLRs. That's part of the. Yep. Oh, that's true. Also, image review off. Yeah, yeah. LCD is useful for the odd angles.
mm,
The when I take a picture and I look through the viewfinder, and again, this is even before I wore glasses, and this I can remember from my very first SLR, like 20, 30 years, oof, 30, 40 years ago. I can never see the complete full um through the viewfinder. I can never see, my camera doesn't do that. It only does the up and down. It doesn't do the side. But I don't see the full image through the viewfinder even now. I have to really go in. So I will check the composition because sometimes I'll miss a little corner or something. But aside from that, I never chimp. The other thing about the weird angles, and again, it depends on your camera, and I know probably both of you have this option. If your camera does the remote via your cell phone,
mhm.
that's heaven on a stick right there because you don't have to mess with the LCD. You have
That is really cool.
your remote, and the selfies that I took of me on the floor with the door and all that stuff and just the cap and with no glasses, those I used the cell phone, and I had it set the timer, and it was fun. It was really fun. I actually want to use that again. But anyway, so let's do this because we're already at 45 minutes. Chris, you want to share two of your photos? Um, or did you choose two photos to share and discuss? Well, go
I
ahead, just pick two. Um, and Pete, you go ahead and start, and Chris will
I'm
find.
I'm not sure how to do that
Well,
in
share screen, you just hit the share screen button at the bottom.
My
So
my my screen looks a bit differently than yours because I'm the admin, so I have probably a couple of different settings. So
right, you
it
can
might
share your
be,
screen.
yeah,
I
I
know
don't know if you see a little somewhere must be three dots, and you click them. No, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. There must be
Oh,
some icon of a computer monitor, and it says share screen, and then you can share the screen.
wait, so I'm sharing. Oh, I'm not sharing now. Well, that's interesting.
Oh,
Oh,
Burn shared, but I'd have to share it. So if I do this, right,
there we
then
go. Sharing
okay,
now, right?
sharing now. So
Okay.
I have to actually allow it to
Oh,
be.
okay. So I'm going to
Okay.
stop sharing. So Pete, you share. I'll tell you what, Chris. You want to let me choose two of your pictures?
Sure, because this whole way of doing things, I've done maybe on, you can count how many times I've done it on one hand, and
Okay, so I'll choose.
my screen to do my PowerPoint was, had me sweating bullets. So
I hear you.
Let
As
me
the
know
with
that we were to share two photos. Let me, because I have Lightroom open. Um, let me just add. Took two, and I have to somehow. Some of my computer today is super slow. I don't know why. Um, Keywords contains.
so wait, you want to let me share? I already have one picture of Chris's that I can share.
So I have mine. So I'm set. So
Go ahead,
whenever.
you can go ahead and talk about this, Chris. So share and how you made the choice and so on. Here we go.
oh,
Can
okay.
you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Please discuss.
Well, uh, I guess this was just, I was looking for the kinds of images because all of us were stuck, kind of in our homes, and this was shot, I think, during the lockdown in California. Uh, and it was just something that was just so alien to be wearing masks, as opposed to being part of like an art shot or some kind of concept you were exploring, and here it's it's the real deal. And, all of the kind of uncertainty that goes along with that, and, fear for friends and relatives and everything, that I just thought that I would try and see if I could capture that in just by taking a selfie.
And what did you see when you saw this, when you were doing it, working with it in post, that made you choose this one?
Well,
As a-
the fact that,
more than one.
yeah, well, the fact that, most of the face is in darkness, and yet the light is just highlighting, that one part of the face where the eye and the mask meet. And so for me, that kind of puts the emphasis on, the kind of emotion that the eye is expressing there with all of this kind of impinging darkness. So that's kind of, I can't say that I was planning that out, right? That I was, trying to do that, but I think this is the image that kind of caught that mindset at the time.
So let me tell you, because I don't know if y'all can see it on the side behind it, but this photo was shared on Luxlit.
Mhm.
What I find in this photograph too that's fascinating isn't just the darkness, but it's the hair, which has a life of its own, which your hair does.
Yes.
No, which is great. I mean, it's and the fact that there's also even the pattern on your mask
Hmm.
is it's a varied. I don't want to say ball of confusion, like, but there's all of this movement, all of this um, uh, that surrounds that serene confusion, blankness, sort of WTF in your eyes.
Hmm.
That wonderful contrast that absolutely just is enthralling to me. Okay, so now when you were looking at this photograph also, did you do any, what sort of adjustments did you make, or did you make any adjustments?
Uh,
Why, do you remember?
I always load up my stuff onto the computer. And I think for this shot, I don't really think I did a whole lot of adjustment. I think that the way that the light was hitting me, and I often take pictures in the part of the kitchen and the family room, because the light that comes in there is often very useful for a shot like this. And as a matter of fact, I don't even think that I don't remember whether I was using a tripod or whether I was actually holding the camera out in front of me, which is a whole other experience, because it's almost like you're having a conversation with yourself. It's, kind of thing. But no, I guess it just caught me because of the contrast of the light and the dark, I think. And it's funny what you mentioned about the mask, because I didn't choose a mask to wear. That was just happened to be the one that was near me. And now that you're talking about it, it kind of reminds me of the pattern in the story of, the yellow wallpaper, which drove this woman mad, because this pattern just kept moving. And, and with all of the day-to-day uncertainty about what we know, what we don't know, can you go out? Can you get it? Can you, it just that I see much more now because you've mentioned something like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, that's what there's the almost repetition of circular, irregular patterns on your hair and on the mask, and actually, which is interesting, because you hear, you're talking about photography and the aspects of it and so on, or visual arts. Straight lines are more stressful, curved lines are more calming and so on. But this is just so much circularness that's serene in the face, kind of, but not really, because then you've got all of this jumble of circularity, if you will, that creates this tension that's just, oh my God, much envy. Anyway, I'll let you choose the next one, although I want to talk about this one. So
you can pick whichever one that you want. That's okay. I've been a bit brain dead for the past couple of days, so I didn't really have any specific photos in mind.
That's fine. All right. So
I didn't know about that either, Christina. So
okay.
Don't worry.
I told you we would choose pictures.
You told me we could probably talk about. No, it's fine. Like, it's absolutely fine.
Okay. So, Christina, you want to talk about this one and anything that what you saw, what you didn't see, and what you did in post-processing, please?
Okay. I think this is another shot where I'm really making use of exposure compensation, because the light on these star jasmine blossoms just made them all but like glow in the dark, so that I can put that setting down pretty far enough that I could get a darker background. But again, it's a kind of star jasmine that's coming from my neighbor's yard, that's kind of, infiltrating a crack in the fence between us. And just the way that the light was hitting it just kind of grabbed my attention, almost like it was giving off light of its own.
Totally. And so then you obviously, from what you were saying about, and by the way, that's a really good point too, because I tend to shoot with lower compensation, exposure compensation as well, because I tend to do black and white. So that right there is a pre-editing step right there for me. So I totally get it. So then probably you would say that in post you didn't do much for this?
For this one, not a whole lot. Maybe just cleaning up a few spots here and there, that I like. If there was, like a blob of, bird duty on it or something like that, I would get rid of that, so that the focus is strictly on the blossoms, that are making that vertical there. The good thing for me is that when you have light that strong, trying to photograph a white flower in bright light, it can make the whites really washed out, which is something that really, really bothers me. Yeah. So having the exposure compensation down allowed me to capture the white and the details within the white without it being, kind of blasted apart.
So just a reminder to the chat, by the way, So this is your chance if you have questions about a photo shown. There is the photographer. So if you have any sort of question regarding that, please don't hesitate to chime in. Just saying. I have I have a question. I won't write it in the chat. I'll ask you directly. Um, uh, I was wondering that for a very long time. I always wanted to ask you, and I always forgot to do so. Do you do the black and white later, or do you shoot black and white
Good.
with the camera?
Uh, well, before I started playing around with the 5D, I was shooting on my T2i in black and white. I'm still learning the 5D, so when I'm using that now, I am shooting in color and then doing the conversion later. But I like to be, and people say that, well, I mean, if you like the color version, then, you have both. But for me, especially with the T2i, it's just, I'm seeing in black and white. I'm seeing in color and shadow. And it's not so much about the color. So in the T2i, I was using primarily just shooting in black and white.
Mm.
And just because I'm not familiar with the 5D yet, I haven't really been
Well,
doing that with that.
if
So
you know the T2i, then you will be very quick into the 5D.
okay, I'm getting there. I haven't really had the
Yeah.
luxury to sit down and go through everything. And
But
You
it's
just became a doctor. Hello.
I was a little busy.
well, I had
Nothing bad.
the T2i was my first DSLR, so I still have it, and so I, do you do any kind of speaking of the T2i and me knowing the T2i, there so when you when you shot or maybe still shoot with the T2i, with the black and white picture style, there are various possibilities to use color filters in terms of red filter, yellow filter to bring out colors or darken them. Did you do anything about that?
There would be sometimes when I would be using the Silver FX Pro. Sometimes I would.
Yeah, but that's later. I mean, in camera,
Okay.
you can
Oh
you
no,
with
not in
the
the camera.
okay. So you use the just the black and white picture style that just the default. So no tweaking within the picture style in the camera.
I don't
That
know
was
that I've ever done tweaking within the camera. I mean,
okay.
for me, the camera is just the tool to, to capture what it is that I'm seeing. I mean, and that's not saying that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that I've never really
No.
learned how to do that. So for me, it's taking the shot and then, perhaps using editing software to, like maybe enter a little sepia or not.
Also, I have a question for either one of you, but I guess this would be Pete. Are you talking about a filter setting? And does that mean that then in that camera, that T2i, I think it is that you were talking about, does that mean that then that only works? Because I was thinking of my Fuji, my little 100X, X100, whatever it was that I had for a while. You could do that kind of filter, but then you would have to be shooting in JPEG, not in RAW.
Yeah. The thing is, if you shoot in RAW, okay, let me. I have it here, right? So maybe I could show it. So what the Canon cameras have, and I think Nikon cameras have a similar thing, just called differently. Sony cameras have some different thing. So with Canon cameras, it's what they call a picture style. One of those picture styles is the black and white picture style. So if you shoot with the black and white picture style in JPEG, you will get a black and white picture. If you shoot it in RAW and you import the RAW file into your editing software, depending on which editing software it is. In my case, it's Lightroom. In your case, Fern, I know it's Camera Raw and now Lightroom as well, I guess. Also,
No, I'm sticking with Camera Raw.
okay. So what the editing software will do is they will interpret the raw file in some way. To my knowledge, but my knowledge is limited, of course. They do not these maybe there is an editing software out there who does that or which does that. I know that Lightroom doesn't do that. So when I import a raw file that I shot with a black and white image picture style on my Canon, I will get a color picture, because when I import it, unless I tell Lightroom to use or to convert it to black and white on import, so
Oh,
that
really?
I can do that. This
So
is one of the, I don't know if that is possible in Camera Raw. I can tell Lightroom, hey, use these very specific settings that I made before, as I basically use this preset that I built, use that on import.
yeah, no,
So, but
there's a
what I meant before is you can actually tweak, and this goes to what you said, Fern, or goes in the direction what you said, Fern. But that only applies to the JPEG file later. I can tweak the black and white picture style in the camera. I can say, hey, make it a bit more contrasty or less
Mhm.
contrasty, or use a filter like when we shoot black and white in analog photography. There are color filters that we
right.
can put
Mm.
in front of the lens. A yellow filter adds more contrast. A red filter, orange filter, makes the blue sky darker, right? A red filter
Mhm.
usually used for portraits to make the skin smoother, right? Remove blemishes a bit. So we can use those digital filters, so by tweaking the picture style in the camera, and that will affect the JPEG, but it won't affect the raw file. Well, it does to an extent, because what we see on the display on the camera is a JPEG preview. So, but it won't really affect the raw file. So we'd have to do everything again with the raw file in our editing software of choice.
You
So
do
if
the
that was your question.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it's funny because so I will tell you the what you made me think of. I did try converting the settings on my Sony so that it would the viewfinder and the photos would be in black and white, and the file itself, even the thumbnails would show up in black and white, and automatically with Camera Raw the raw files would show up in black and white. There was no color information anywhere.
Mm.
Uh, but honestly, um, it wasn't satisfying. And I do sometimes see stuff in color, so I switched back. But I get your point, Chris, because most of the time, especially when I'm doing the architectural stuff and the portraiture, I have to admit, I see in black and white. Totally. I'm on the fence to that, but that's really interesting because again, it's just a different way of using the same tool. So,
Like,
Pete, you wanna show your pictures?
Yeah, sure. What do you want to see? I have two pictures. One very comparatively typical picture,
Sure,
and one very unusual photo.
sure.
Posted both. So what you want to see first?
Just whichever one you want. Go
So
ahead.
then let me go. Then let's start with a very comparatively typical photo. So, and somehow, yeah.
hmm.
So I can even let me do it and make it full screen. Let's see, full screen. Why doesn't it do full screen?
There we go.
It switches back. I'm sorry. So hope it.
But that's actually, you know what? When you were saying typical, I usually think of lots of trees and stuff. This isn't really
There
typical.
are lots of trees in that photo.
No, no,
Just
no.
look closely.
You see the trees. This is a larger landscape. It's gorgeous, but it's not what I think of as your typical. I usually think of forests. This is like mountain valley. It's gorgeous. So anyway, what did you do to this in what did you see in this, and what did you do to this in your processing?
That was kind of interesting for two reasons. Number one, well, that's very interesting that you say it, that you don't consider it to be typical, for the simple reason that, of course, you mostly know the photos that I post to my Tumblr, and not necessarily the photos that I take. So this is actually something that I posted this to my Tumblr, But this is indeed a photo that is not very typical for my Tumblr because it is in landscape orientation. I rarely post landscape orientation photos to my Tumblr, and I think that goes to the second part of this whole topic that we have, choosing to post photos for social media, because I really think it's important to have in mind which platform it is. I post different photos or photos in a different way to my Instagram, for example,
Mhm.
which I plugged here, by the way, on the top left on my Lightroom. Um, because landscape photos, as at least those really wide landscape photos, also don't really work a lot or very well on Instagram, while photos like that work much better on 500px and Flickr, etc., etc. The dashboard on Tumblr is not very wide, so I usually post portrait orientation photos. Um, so this is when I was there, I was just I was just blown away by the view.
Mm.
And what
That's
I
obvious, by the way.
pardon?
That's obvious.
Yeah, it is a gorgeous view.
It's
And we were there, by the way, with Heiko. It was last year, as you can see, 2019. One of the last photos, or one that I made with my T5i, by the way, before I got my, well, it was in September, but a couple of months later, got my 90D and gave my T5i away. So, but what turned out, or what happened later, I was just playing around in Lightroom, and I came up with this. Well, I can show you basically, because this is the edit. So I changed the exposure a bit. I increased the contrast, and I got and brought the blacks down. And that was basically it. So you see the slider. So there's not so much done with the photo.
What about the color?
And that is the interesting thing. The color wasn't it was the color is or was created by just changing the exposure and the contrast.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was really interesting to me because as you can see, the white balance is as shot. I didn't
Right.
do anything with the white balance. I didn't change the colors at all, right?
Right.
All
And
I
that
did was bring the blacks down. So
right. Oh, you
that
did
does a lot already.
the blacks. Oh yeah, the blacks increases the
And
saturation.
that increases the saturation.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it was this extremely moody shot. And the only thing I really did was to bring in a gradient from the top to the middle to bring the brightness of the clouds down,
Okay.
because they were very bright. So to get the clouds really moody. Thank you, Amy, on the chat. It's very moody. She writes. So this is basically all. And I was surprised by the mood that this photo suddenly had. And this is what I was referring to um before. Like I saw a different photo, right? Let me do it. Let me do let me just undo. Um this is the shot like it was, right? I cropped it and made it really wide angle, very, very underexposed. So you see there's a lot of room here. And I was, because I love to play with the aperture priority mode, which also exists basically on using exposure compensation. And I usually have my exposure compensation a bit dialed back, and I forgot to turn it back up for that shot. And so I this photo was basically an accident. So it's an underexposed shot, right? It's not a good photo like that. You don't really see too much. And then just by bringing the exposure up, and then bringing the top part of the photo with a gradient back down to the more or less original brightness, and just increasing the contrast, made a completely different shot.
Yeah.
And so allowing ourselves to go in different directions and playing with a photo can create something very different. So when I was there, I saw something very different and I captured it. What it was basically, I rather saw something like this, right? So about an f-stop brighter. And by accident, I underexposed it and I worked with that. So it's not that okay, the photo doesn't work, it's underexposed, throw it away, playing around with it. And sometimes something happens and sometimes most of the time it doesn't. So Bart writes, it's a typical Pete photo. It has this meticulous control of light. Well,
Yes,
I
that is
can't
true.
really
That is
control
true.
the light, but thank you, Bart. So light, well, I think we all agree on that. Light is the most important part of photography anyway.
So
So
what's
I just simply don't shoot if the light ain't right. I mix that up. So yeah.
what's your next picture?
Oh, you want to see the next picture? Okay, then I show you the next picture. You will be surprised, I guess. You will be surprised.
Oh,
Also light.
Yeah.
And that is, by the way, Fern, that is also the Munich Olympic Stadium where we were. It was a
okay.
couple of years before, so it wasn't, well, a year before we went there, I
It was
guess.
a year before. Well, almost
When
2 years because it's
almost 2 years,
January
yeah.
and we went in October. But yeah,
Right. So, and this is a very untypical photo.
yeah.
I don't usually don't do. I don't know where that black bar comes. Where the black bar on, because the photo is higher. I don't know if it's now full on. I don't know. Something doesn't really. Now, okay. Now it's
So
now it's
why
switched
this
back.
picture? And what did you do?
This is a photo. I just saw it and I raised the camera and I took the photo. So there was no. This was really just by out of complete from the gut, right? I just went there and I saw that red, whatever it is, hot in the background, and I saw these diagonals and just took the camera up and took a shot, and that was it. And the only thing you see, there's a bit more done to work with the light, um, raising contrast a lot, very high contrast, bringing the highlights down, bringing the shadows up to get, because that shot, let's
Right.
do the same thing, create virtual copy, and I cropped it, I guess, a bit. So, well, this is the original photo. So, and oopsie, sorry. And this is, where is it? Where's my shot? This is the, so it's basically clarity raised. Back then, I loved the clarity slider in Lightroom. This is still Lightroom 6, by the way. On Lightroom CC, there are now two other sliders that I
Clarity,
love much
texture,
more.
and I can't remember the other one, which is the one that I always go to at the bottom that brings up the mid-range shadows.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So since then, I hardly ever touched the clarity slider. Amy writes, wait, that is a building. Yeah, it is a building. It is the Munich Olympic Stadium, and that diagonal you see on the top is where the seats are. I don't know if that made sense.
So that's under where we were, because I don't
It's where
remember.
we were, right?
Yeah.
So we walked on top, and this is just the ground floor.
Yeah, it's a
So
concession stand. They probably sell sodas and
yeah,
beer.
beer. Probably it's Munich. They play soccer there, so it's beer and pretzels.
Beer and
That's what we have here.
pretzels. Anyway, no, that's gorgeous. I have to say. All right. So, anything else?
I don't
I
know.
love that, Pete. That's yeah.
And you know what I like about it? It's still portrait, but it's almost like if you did with the shadows and everything, it's like you did a square cut, a square crop almost. So the picture
No,
naturally.
I didn't. This is
No,
because
no,
that
I know.
black bar in the photo. It's I don't know. Let me check. Maybe I can make it smaller. So, oopsie. No, I didn't want to make it bigger. I want to make it smaller. So,
No, no, it looks like a square crop, but it's because of the shadows at the
oh,
bottom.
I see.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
see what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
So this
That
is
they
Yeah.
give it that square sense that focus in more, but the
right.
bottom darkness doesn't feel like a waste of space.
This is
It
what I
Yeah.
do very often, by the way. No matter what kind of photo, if there's some, I love um, empty space, basically,
Mhm.
right? So just darkening is, I think, to an extent, very similar in a very different way, but the idea is similar to what you do, Christina. In parts, there are
right.
parts of the image that are just don't tell anything, and
Mhm.
just make them black, right? But we need those parts sometimes to keep the composition. I think this photo
Mhm.
works much better if it have with that black on the bottom, that if I just crop it away. So because it basically creates, let me make it a bit bigger again. Somehow, I don't know why that doesn't work. So this leads in here, right? So there's a movement in here, and there's a movement in here. So we have these counter movements from the black
Mhm.
moving from the bottom left to the mid right, while the light comes from the top right to the mid left. And here that bright part, and I don't know if that is visible on the video, but I left this black line on the left on purpose because there's a black line here as well. So this is,
Mhm.
I don't know if that works for everyone. Maybe it's just on my monitor, but on my screen, I think because this was actually something where I sat there for quite a while and played around and thought about, will I crop it away? So will I do this, right? But I think it works this way much better because it gives it sort of a frame, and it also mirrors here because there's a slight black line as well.
Mhm.
So, but yeah.
All right, so I am going to um, hold on. Let's do this one and this one. So I'm going to open these in Lightroom. Might as well. So I'm going to share, and I'm going to actually go into what I usually do um, with my pictures. That's very cool. I have to say, I really like that second one. It's one of those pictures that if we were taking it, you'd be sitting there going, "Why the fuck are they taking a picture of this?" But you took it. This one is special to me for a whole bunch of reasons. I still think, even though I know I have taken some really good portraits, solid portraits, my portraits are very generic in the sense that they're not the creative pose, so on and so forth. They're very in the moment. Here's the person, maybe 5 minutes, maybe laugh, whatever, and get that spark, make them say something stupid, make them say shit, like I've said before. Um, and this was one of the very first times that I remember asking a stranger if I could take their picture. And this was at the Oakland Jazz Festival in 2014. And I remember it because this was, I had driven to LA. And Chris, we didn't wind up meeting there. I did meet Sam. I
Mhm.
did go to the Getty, to the life altering Ansel Adams exhibit. I went twice. Um, and it was just a wonderful experience. But I had a car for a whole week, so then I went to Oakland, went to the jazz festival, met up with two former students, had a wonderful time. But anyway, this woman just looked really cool to me, and I loved The glasses, I loved the message of the glasses.
Mhm.
Because Oakland it was and still is to a certain degree very much a majority black and majority people of color city. But even though it was a musical event, she's got these glasses on, and there was just something about her silver hair, her I don't give a rat's ass hair. I mean, it's gorgeous, and she looked really good. And I remember when I asked her, she said, "Well, why?" And I'm like, "Oh, you just look really cool." And she's like, "Okay." And that's sort of the expression that it captured. And to me, that's sort of the magic that I still see when I'm photographing people most of the time, whether it's an event, whether it's with permission, or whether it's a candid, street photo kind of thing. There's always something. I don't think I capture the person's soul. I don't think that's a possibility, but I capture something that expresses a part of them. And this picture says that. Plus, I just really love the look of it. I love the black and whiteness of it. It didn't work in color. And so what I did here, so let me show you. I tend to, two things. I tend to ramp up dehaze, as you can see here, the dehaze. I tend to, a lot of
Dehaze was it?
dehaze,
Dehaze is the magic.
that's
It is
it.
sorry to interrupt, but dehaze is a wonderful, wonderful tool for portraits.
For everything,
For
honestly,
everything.
the very first thing I go to with a picture now, it's not exposure, it's dehazing. That's the very first thing I do. Depending now, if I'm doing my urban architecture, a lot of times I'll go from the bottom up. I'll go dehazing, increase that, but then the next thing I'll do is clarity. Now for my urban, my very stark black and white ones, I will take that clarity and ramp it up to 100.
We don't even have to go from the top to the bottom, because usually, unless you're like me and go on a mountain and forgot to reset your camera and just snap away and end up with underexposed photos, right? But usually we try to get the exposure right anyway, so why would we want to change the exposure first so we can jump into the dehazing
Right,
from the
right.
get-go,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But here's the other thing, and I didn't do it with this one. Maybe I did it with the other one. But what I do now is I also before I increase the blacks, I increase the whiteness. So instead of exposure, and I remember seeing a video, and I know I shared it on Tumblr on Luxlit, where this guy talked about, and actually with a portrait, increasing the whiteness and then decreasing the exposure. And in a sense, the whiteness acted as exposure. And I kind of like that effect better, and especially in black and white. And again, I mean, it depends on the photograph for me, but this is the kind of settings you'll see. Shadows very little, because I did the dehazing and that brought up the mid shadows. Highlights, I tend to, and I a lot of times will decrease highlights even more, especially if it's overexposed. I will take it down to 100. But again, it depends on the photograph. But those are the settings. And then exposure very little. Custom, I did change the temperature, which I will do when I'm doing portraits. I will sometimes change the white balance manually. The other thing that I do often is the black and white. As you can see here, I will mess with the black and white mixer, the grayscale, which is what used to be called the grayscale. But this photograph to me just I mean, I still look at this photograph, but to me, because I think it's such a powerful photograph, it reminds me of exactly why I took a picture. So it's this vicious circle of taking me back, and then taking me back makes me appreciate the picture. I love this picture. I still do. And it's a 5-year-old picture. The other one was from a year before. And again, this was a second try, or maybe even the third try. I think this is the latest version. I just redid this one last night when I was looking at it, because I redid another one that's the same thing, but from a portrait angle. And again, you'll see here I shot the oranges way down, because the background that's very much bokeh'd out is orange. So what I did here was I just brought the oranges down, and also for this. Oh, actually, that's what it is. Yeah. So I wanted this to be in more shadow. Um, the yellows are high because it's really mostly just yellow and black and white. And again, this is a way of increasing for me, sometimes, especially in black and white, increasing exposure or decreasing exposures by using the yellow, which is the usual light that's there. All of these others, by the way, don't affect diddly squat damn in this picture. Then again, the dehaze, I shut down the clarity because I think it's sharp enough and I didn't want that popping whiteness. Lots of black, lots of white. And here, highlights to 0 and the exposure to negative 65. I underexposed it because I had all that white. And as you can see here, let's just increase this a little. See, it's almost like increasing the exposure. But I like it where it was. And the reason I love this photograph, the sense of motion, the capture of texture, the whole idea of dark and light and line, that still basically this is still what I photograph when I do anything that's not, I want to say, human or animal, and mostly my urban geometry. This is, which I was already doing at the time. This is what I still look for. This is what I still see. Except this was just a strap at work on a shelf, just sitting there, that I photographed and went, damn, I love the sense of motion, darkness. There's something. Yet, by the way, and the reason I love this photograph too is it got maybe, I think both times it got maybe 48 likes. It didn't get a reblog or anything, I don't think. And yet, TJ of all people, I showed him this picture. He said, "Wow, that's a great picture." And I'm like, dude, and to me, I mean, not because someone else's opinion matters, but again, this is something, by the way, I would share and probably have shared in Instagram, which is where I post my more, I don't want to say hopefully try to post my best pictures. Tumblr is my playground. Tumblr is where I post sometimes stuff that I'm not sure about, because there I'm not promoting myself. It's my playground. Which goes to your point too, Pete. I have one for the more, this is for the world, and Tumblr is where I just humiliate myself and post shit sometimes. You got to do it. So yeah, that's it. Any questions?
But that reminds me of a photo, and I didn't really pay attention too much to Tumblr lately for a million reasons, but it reminds me of a photo, and I just checked and I saw that Luxlit reblogged it. So thank you, lovely Luxlit people. I don't know who you are. And this is, let me share the screen, because I just realized, sorry, it took, I'm not really tech savvy. I just, damn it. So, okay. Share screen. And I just realized that this is very close to what Christina does. So I probably have to give you credit, because without seeing your photos, I would have never come up with something like that. And I just realized this now. And this was also one of those shots that I was behind the house. There are fields, and you know that, Fern, you've been here. We haven't been there, but so, and I saw that leaf crumpled on the wayside. And this was what you said before, Christina. I saw that, and I knew this is black and white. This has to be black and white. And so I also played around with exposure compensation to get the black or the darks as black as possible. I didn't do any kind of retouching, anything to darken the rest. So this is really just playing with exposure and with black and white. I didn't do this in black and white in the camera, I think I used the black and white picture style, but to see whether it will work out or not. So to have a preview, but then did the black and white conversion later on in Lightroom. And so this is sometimes we see something and just know how it has to look like. And this is also there were like tons of these leaves on the wayside because I don't know what that plant is. It must be some sort of a
It's
I don't
dying,
know.
is what it is.
Pardon?
It's dying.
A dying plant. Yeah. No, it must be some sort of gourd or zucchini type of thing, I guess. And there were tons of them. And I just saw the structures and the patterns, and I knew this has to be in black and white. And then I was looking for the exactly right leaf. And so I found that one, and apparently it works. At least the Luxlit people think so. So thank you again, lovely
Absolutely.
Luxlit people.
That's beautiful.
And by
Thank
the
you.
way, it's the same thing with my photograph of the strap.
Uh-huh.
It's I don't know if I was following you at the time, but it is very much your style of photography. You know, and so you are influential, not just because you're a doctor,
Totally,
but you've
totally.
been for a while. Just
Well, thank you.
No, absolutely. And this is not um, I really mean it when I say I wouldn't have never thought about a shot like that without having your photos in the back of my head. So definitely. So the credits definitely go to you with that photo.
That's beautiful. I loved your shot as well, Fern.
the what? Oh,
I love your shot as well, Fern. I mean, the most unlikely things that you would miss in any other moment, that the light just, just draws you into it.
that's it. Well, I have to admit, for me, it wasn't so much the light at that moment as it was the line and the circularity of it, and it just absolutely blew me away once I saw it. And if I remember correctly, those two shots, and then there's the one that I'm actually posting today, so I can share that one real quick with since we're talking about that shot. I took just two shots, one portrait and one vertical, and I like both of them. And interestingly enough, until let's do this. Let's go here. Let's close this. Let's do this. Oh, good grief. Where is it? Oh well. Anyway, it's the same thing, but it's from the portrait view. And I'd had it all this time, and I never did diddly squat with it until I was looking at the shot that I shared, and I went, wait a second, this is cool. This is worth it. Let's do something with this. And sure enough, yeah, here it is. So this is the portrait view of the shot now, as compared to. Oh, I just closed the other one, and I like this one. And to me, I like it for a totally different reason. You know, it's almost like two different shots, and the light is slightly different. But yeah, I mean, and it goes back to what Pete said too. Sometimes you go back and you look at your old photos and you go, huh, you know. I mean, I do dump a lot, but I do keep some every once in a while because you just never know. And I've had this for almost to the day, because this was taken August 13th of 2015, so almost exactly 5 years ago. And I see this by accident, and I go, why didn't I work with this?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, all the emphasis in that is in the motion.
Yeah.
The texture and the motion. Whereas, the other shot is kind of, that's balanced against, this other area behind it.
Right.
So yeah, both wonderful, but, very different photo looking at this one.
Very different photos. Anyway, let's stop sharing. So I'm going to stop talking. Do we have anything else? Because we're over an hour and a half. Pete, you're muted.
Admitted you enjoyed that.
It was.
Can we briefly talk a bit about I mean the deciding process? No, you, both of you, give me in one sentence, if you can. What is it that makes you decide to use a photo? I know, Fern. Can you just shut the camera off when you get
Sorry, I coughed up something and I didn't want to. Sorry.
yeah, there are things that we don't want to see.
I'm
Just
sorry. I didn't realize. See, I'm sorry.
okay. So can you
But at
say
least you saw my face.
in one sentence, what is it that makes you choose a photo?
Okay, so it's the same. So I originally thought of this, believe it or not, to discuss how we choose photos for reblogging. But it's also the same for my photos. Although the photos for reblogging are already the finished product. If it speaks to me, then it's getting reblogged. And for my pictures, it's the same thing. If I see the possibilities, even if it takes 5 years to see those possibilities, but at least I saw something in that picture that I didn't dump that file.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what I mean? So that's if I see something that hits me, and like with the one of the strap that got, I mean, I'm happy. I mean, you know me, if it's over 30, if I get over 30 notes, I'm ecstatic. So that got like 50. I'm just happy as all get out, both times. But that photo to me is just so, I mean, I look at it and it's just so much what I still do in certain ways. And that's what I still see, which is also, Chris, going back to what you're saying. I know Pete doesn't do this. I do dump a lot of my photos from Tumblr because I use Tumblr to go through sometimes and say, oh, this picture's really good. And it's just so much crap in there that I've posted. It's like, just get rid of this shit because you know it's not going to go anywhere. Not because I'm ashamed of it, because I'm not, but there has to be something that catches my eye, whether anybody else sees it or not. But yeah, so it has to just catch my eye.
I guess it's pretty much the same for me. I mean, when, the images that I put out there aren't, they get put out whether it's on Tumblr or on other mediums, because I put on Flickr, and Instagram is relatively new for me. I was not posting anything on that, although that is all photographs. I don't think I would post. I mean, for me, I don't have the kind of playground that you do. I guess that's my desktop. But for me, it's a weird, almost a felt sense when an image is right. It's almost as if there's a bell ringing inside that said, this is it, and get sent out into the world once, I have that kind of experience with it. And then it doesn't land. My images don't land with everybody, in the way that I have a relationship with them, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And then I get, some of the images that I post that I'm maybe not as attached to, they take off and people are like, oh, this is insane. This is crazy. I'm like, okay. But it's for me. If I don't have that, some kind of feeling on the inside that this is the image that is meant to be and meant to be out there, then yeah, they don't get posted, period. And when they do, it's kind of like sending your children out into the world. You can't control how other people respond to what you're doing. This is what I'm doing for me. This is how I'm seeing the world. This is how I'm translating my experience. And if that, resonates with other people, that's great.
What about you, Pete? You can close. Go ahead.
For me, and I'm aware that this kind of contradicts what I said before. For me, it's purely a question of whether I can emotionally connect to a photo.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so this is, for me, this is really a three-stage process. The taking of the photo, being there, camera,
Mhm.
finding the composition, pressing the shutter, right? Then before, of course, making the settings. Then distancing myself from the photo on the computer, checking the photos, throwing those out that are crap, right? From a technical standpoint. And then looking at those and then saying, okay, I have some sort of an emotional connection to that shot. Let's see what we can do with that
Mhm.
photo. And yeah, but basically that's it. And I think this is also something we need to talk about. And I mentioned it before briefly. Depending on which social media platform we put something out, I put when we're talking about Instagram, for example, I most people use Instagram, and I know that most people started to use Tumblr on their phones only, right? But Instagram was a phone only thing from the get go.
Mhm.
So, and this is one of the reasons why I hesitate. Well, not hesitate. Why I just simply I had an Instagram and I wasn't happy with it. Stopped using it. Deleted it eventually. Then I started to have an Instagram again, but I just don't like these, and I only have it because I have a 10-inch tablet. And my Instagram is on my tablet mostly. I have it on my phone as well, but I use it from my tablet because the photos on Instagram, for me, it's just it doesn't work. I mean, for most of my photos, because my photos have lots of details in them, and Tumblr is already way too small for my photos. The
Well,
Tumblr
but
dashboard is
you can at least click on it and
you
get the
can at least click on it, right?
on the
And
computer, not
so
the
Yeah.
tablet, on the
and
mobile.
there's the thing, I hardly post my landscape in terms of landscape orientation photos to Tumblr simply because they don't work. They don't work on the dashboard. So if I do, then I usually put together a set with 2 or 3 photos to have them bigger so that people that they make a bitter. I hope they don't make a better impact, but they have a set has to work itself. So
Mhm.
choosing the photographs for the platform, maybe making a different crop of a photo. And there was some years ago, I was really peed off because someone, without my consent, used one of my photos, cropped it, and put it on their Instagram to
Yeah.
promote me. The idea was to promote me. I believe that. We talked about that, Fern.
Yeah.
And then I messaged the person, I friendly said that I appreciate that they supported me and they want to give shout out for my photos in my blog, but I really do not agree with the fact that they cropped my photo because this is not the photo that I wanted to show. And so I don't want to go to this. This led to a big discussion, and but it's a crop of a photo. Some photos we can crop. I even think that this photo couldn't have been cropped because this just whatever. So choosing which platform we use for a photo or working on a photo specifically for a platform, and this is nothing unusual, right? When we think about, for example, movie grading, so giving it a look, a color look.
Mhm.
Movies, big budget movies, get a different grade for cinema. They get a different grade for television. They get a different grade for streaming platforms, they get a different grade for DVD and a different grade for Blu-ray.
Yeah, but that's an automatic process.
That is not an automatic process.
You can, but well, it's automatic in the sense that you can choose. Okay, for
No,
this,
no, 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 no. This
when
is a person sitting there.
files, you can say, I want to save it for this. I want to save it for
No,
this.
no, no, not saving it, but giving it a different color look depending
Oh, that's what you're saying.
on the medium. And so,
That's a lot.
of course, we want to choose which photos. I mean, of course, there are people who just put their photos out on every platform, which is fine if this what they want to do. I don't, but effectively, if we want to post our photos or show our photos effectively, we have to be very selective, and we have to check what works better, because there are different aspect ratios that work better on Instagram than work on Tumblr or on Flickr or on 500p. Well, Flickr and 500px basically, well, probably. Well, even no, I wouldn't even say that, because Flickr has a different layout when we look at the photo stream than, for example, 500px has. So if we want to make an impact with our photos, then we better be look at streams that we like and look at what they do, or even do some research on. I mean, I know there's lots of info on how to post to Instagram most effectively, which is absolutely fine, and using which aspect ratios most important part, certainly.
I mean,
So yeah.
use the aspect ratio that you to upload a photo on Instagram, because I noticed that vertical shots get cropped.
Yeah, and I know that we can with like pinching and we can do something with that, but sometimes, at least with a lot of my photos, I can't get the whole photo in an Instagram. So I'd have to put it in it with a different software into a square crop or whatever, and to have the full photo. So have a frame around it, and sometimes a frame works and sometimes it doesn't. So there are lots of photos that I would never show on Instagram, just like there are a lot of photos that I would never show on Tumblr. So basically, all my widescreen photos, I don't show them on Tumblr, and I wouldn't show many of my portrait orientation photos on Instagram. So I have to find a crop that works for these photos, or even make. And this is where sometimes cameras come in handy, because at least with my camera, I can even choose a crop right in the camera. So I don't know if there's an Instagram crop, but we can choose square and 16:9 and 2:3, etc.
This app that I've shared that I'm sharing on my screen now is the one that I use. There's different ones, but what it does is, for example, on my Instagram, and I will show you actually. So let's do this. Oh dear God, spell it right. Wait, hold on. Let's do this real quick, Fernando. Boom. So what it does is it walks you through the process, and like, see this picture here. I can choose the black background, so that then I can put whatever kind within the square, and I don't have to do any cropping or anything. The other thing I wanted to let you,
but that is, can I ask you a question? I get it with the black background, but sometimes when I choose a portrait orientation photo for Instagram, and Instagram does a crop by itself, crops the photo by itself, and I can adjust that crop by using my two fingers, pinching in. But sometimes I cannot squeeze it small enough to have the full photo in the shot.
that's why you use this. What this does is it takes the photo, and then it will see this right here.
I see. So it isn't Instagram itself, so you use an app for that.
You start here, and then for example, this is the default, so it'll show the picture in the background as part of it. What I do is I choose the black background, and then it will do, it's where that blurred bulk is, the black back there, and then it'll say save, and then it'll give you a choice of where you want to send it to. I always choose Instagram. You're done. No fuss, no fuss.
I see. So it's a different app.
Yeah, you can. I mean, it's in the App Store for either Android or Apple. I just happen to use SquarePic, then you can choose like this.
This is not a sponsored video.
This is not a sponsored. Actually, this photograph that I chose, there it is. There's the black bars. You can choose black, you can choose white, red, whatever you want, and then it just takes it and saves it, and then you move on.
Amy asks what the name of the app is.
The name of the app. This one is SquarePic.
SquarePic. Okay.
SquarePic.
Right. And I just basically, to find this, I did there's Square Grid. See, you can see more here that are similar.
I see. How cool is that?
Yeah. And I've been using this for like 2 years.
Awesome. So we need to get a separate app so that we can show our photos the way we want to on a photo sharing platform.
Ding, ding, ding. Because
I get that right.
It's not photography. So the other thing I wanted to show you all, and
now I know why this guy's name is Zuckerberg.
Huh? Oh, so wait, and I think it was Bud.
For different reasons.
Originally. So in Chrome, especially, if you right-click on Instagram, right? You can bring it up and hit inspect. Then you click on this little icon here, toggle device toolbar, and then it'll turn into, on a Mac. I don't know if this will work on a PC. I know it works like this on my Mac. All of a sudden, it will become the just like the mobile app almost. So what I do is then I refresh, and now I have all of the options here: home, add, look at my own stuff, the messages, all of the stuff is here, and I can look at Instagram on my computer in a lot higher quality.
So you can post from the computer to your Instagram.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Like these pictures that are square that I did post, these are all square. I posted these straight from my computer.
How cool is that?
When I want to do one that's in portrait or landscape, then I'll go on. I'll download the picture onto the mobile, go into the SquarePic app, do the background, and post it that way. But usually, since I've been going more and more square format, I just post straight from here. I mean, I can just do this, boom, and I don't know. Let's choose this one, open, and it'll hit next, yada yada. There you go, and I can just post from here. Right. Whoops, photo, boom. And you can just post, just and then share. I'm not going to share because I don't want to share that picture. But yeah, it's that simple. And then when you're finished, I always click on here again, so it toggles back to the desktop view, and then I just get out. Boom, you're done. So like I said, I think it was Bud who shared this.
Thank you, Bud.
Yeah, no, Amy, SquarePic, as far as I know, I haven't tried it on my desktop on my Mac. I could, but I just haven't tried it because I post maybe twice a month on Instagram. I have lost, Tumblr is still my playground. It's still where I develop, where I grow, where I learn. So yeah, Instagram is just, oh, here's my picture. There's some comments, and it's nice to share and it's nice to communicate. And I actually like with Chris, we communicated via the messages on Instagram. But as far as a platform that's a thriving community kind of thing, to me, there's still nothing like Tumblr, which I've said so many times before, because there's a lot more variety to it. It's not just a picture. So yeah, whoops, let me stop sharing because who wants to see my face? Did I lose y'all?
No, I just figured out how I can solo you.
Why?
As well.
Anyway,
I didn't know that it works.
I think we should be done because we're coming into 2 hours.
That happened last time I was here.
Time goes by so fast whenever we talk with Dr. Fern.
Anyway, do you have anything else to say, Chris? I mean, sorry, Dr. Krause?
Yeah. Other than thank you, I mean, I've been taking notes here from what you were saying before, and then I didn't even know that an app like SquarePic existed. So I was doing my photos through my phone, and then but I could access them and cut and paste comments on my computer. So there's a lot out there. I mean, you guys should do a show just on that. I think for all the different tools. I mean, well, in addition, I mean, because I'm sure there are a lot of.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Although I have to say, and I've said this before. Actually, when I was in Seattle, because I was hopefully going to meet up with someone who lives up there who's on Tumblr, I actually turned on and installed the Tumblr app on my phone. But as soon as I left Seattle, that Tumblr app was off my phone. I don't like mobile devices except for the very basic stuff. I produce stuff, I don't consume, and I think any of us who produce content, the way to go is the desktop. Sorry, whether it's a Mac or a PC or Google Chrome OS, lovely, but the bottom line is I need a keyboard. I need room to.
Yep.
No, I agree.
The literally only cool mobile device ever is the Nintendo Switch.
Sorry, the only cool mobile device was the Windows Phone. I still miss my Windows Phone. It was $60 when I bought it. It was cheap. It was the one I took to Germany the first time I went. Worked beautifully. It worked for over 3 years, and I loved the operating system. I miss my Windows Phone. Anyway, I'm done. I'm done. It's 4 more minutes to 2 hours. I'm done. Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead, Chris. Close.
Oh,
Say something deep, Chris.
Oh, God.
You're a doctor. You could do that.
No, I'm in the shallows right now.
You've been in the deep end for quite a while, so I get it. Trust me. Yeah.
I'm ready for some Danielle Steele right now.
There you go. I still I have not read fiction in, I want to say, almost 20 years. Because between the academic stuff and even now, because I'm reading more spiritual, and I actually bought Carly Simon's autobiography, Memoirs, which I absolutely, I highly recommend. Hold on, this book, and then I will shut up. Which is what turned me on. Carly Simon is still, to this day, my favorite singer-composer. It is about her relationship with Jackie Onassis, but it really winds up being more an autobiographical look, and then talks about Jackie Onassis in her life. Beautifully written, light language, lovely poetic language, like her lyrics, but very deep, and it just, so I bought her Boys in the Trees, which is her memoir. I absolutely highly recommend this, and I'm sure the other one's going to be just as good. Anyway.
Yeah. What was the last fiction book we read?
Whoa. I'll tell you what. I think it was Octavia. I think it was Octavia Butler. And I think it was either Kindred. I think it was Kindred. I think it was Kindred, and I also read one of the last fiction books that I read was also one of her science fiction ones. And by the way, I had the honor of seeing her. She came in as a speaker like 13, 12 years ago on campus. And I happened to attend her presentation, which was just astounding. But I think the last author was Octavia Butler. Yeah.
Wow.
or Kurt Vonnegut, one of the two.
Yeah,
I know that one. That one I know.
Anyway, I'm done.
Done. Then we talk. I think we talked about everything we wanted to talk about, right? We talked about how we choose photos, from the photos that we took on a during a day of shooting or when we just went out there, right? We talked about the editing process. This is the editing process, right? The choosing we of the photographs that we use. We talked about we briefly talked about the processing process, right? Which also is sort of an editing process. We talked about how we, not how to, always very subjective, um, choose which photos to. Maybe one thing, just as a thought, even if we say, okay, we choose a photo for its or we choose when we choose a photo for a specific platform, I think it's also a matter of, you say, Fern, you have Tumblr is your playground. Christina says she doesn't have a playground other than her desktop, right? Um, for me, it's like as you know, I don't just have one blog. For me, I kind of I post different stuff to different blogs
Hmm.
because I need that kind of separation, and which is sometimes it's extremely liberating, and sometimes I find it's kind of, I don't want to have I don't want to have a Tumblr, an Instagram, and a Flickr. Well, I don't post to Flickr. I do have a Flickr account, but I don't post there because I simply do not. I don't even have the time for Tumblr at the moment. So that is a thing, like with Instagram, that I kind of, okay, I have it in my pocket with my because the Instagram is an app, while Tumblr for me is always on the computer. I hate the Tumblr app. So, but that's kind of, on the other hand, kind of restricting when I say, okay, I do this for this platform, and I do that for that platform, and I do this for this blog, and I do that for that blog. On the other hand, I don't want to mix it all into one. So this is, for me, I'm always kind of in this limbo of what do I want to do, what do I have to do, can I do this or can I do that, and sometimes I don't post a photo because I don't know where to put it, right?
Mm.
So this is the thing, and um maybe we'll stop with that confusion.
Although that is an interesting point, though, because I have blogs of my own that feature both my photography and text, uh, blogs that are just photography.
Mm,
And they tend to be photography sites where you don't have a community like Tumblr. So you're
mm,
not going to get as much feedback from people, but yet it's a place where, Pete, like you were mentioning, that I think the quality of things, uh, it's more about the quality of the image as opposed to just having it in a social media arena. And I find out places like that are where I get more interest from people who are asking, like, do you sell your stuff? Do you make prints of things? Which really isn't ultimately my goal or anything, but yeah, I think it is something to think about. It's, what mediums are you using? What platforms are you using? I mean, because at first Flickr was my only one. I didn't know of any others.
mm.
And then from Flickr, there was Tumblr, and then there's Viewbug and 500px, and there used to be jpmag.com, so there's a lot out there, things that come and go. So that is an important thing to think about, I think.
Well, and the thing with Tumblr, which is why I understand how some people leave and so on. It can be a time investment because it is more. It can be a lot more than just sharing your photos.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that sense too of and taste change, and Tumblr has changed, although I still see this. So it just really depends on where you are. All right, so Pete, I think we're about done. So let's just go ahead and end this. And
So
oh,
you do know the movie, what is it? The Mel Brooks movie, the Star Wars spoof. What is it
Oh,
called?
is it Spaceballs?
Space
Spaceballs, right? Your Pizza the Hut.
Pizza the Hut. Oh, I love
This
this.
is kind of gross. This is kind of really gross.
Well, in the beginning
So
of the show, pizza in and now this out. So it's like full.
I don't want to get puked on from by a pizza with pizza.
Anyway, take us out of here, Pete. By the way, but before you do that, I'm going to do the screen share so that you all know what I'm using for this, just in case you're curious. So this also works for
I'm
Zoom.
really
We do this for work sometimes just for fun. There's a Snap Camera app, and then what you do is you can choose here whatever, let's say pizza, let's say dog, and then you can choose, there we go. Let's see this one. Yeah, there we go. So you see little doggies on my face, and then what you do is
it
in
doesn't get better, Fern.
no in the in the camera app, like in Zoom or here, you go into settings and you choose your camera and you choose Snap Camera. So now I'm going back to FaceTime, which is the computer's camera, and no more of this stuff. Stop sharing, and now it's just me.
You see me slightly grossed out, but okay. It's okay.
Okay, so anyway, take us out of here. Thank you so very much, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very, very much for joining. And I don't know if I want to thank you, Fern, but yeah, thank you for being here, I guess. Right? Not for the pizza and the doggies. So at least we know what Fern means when he talks about doggies. No, okay, no, let's not.
No,
Let's
no,
not go down this rabbit hole.
go down that road.
So thank you. Let's wrap this up. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the chat, all you wonderful people on the chat. Thank you. It was a blast, like always. And it was a double blast for me for having Christina on the show again. So thank you. It was really a surprise for me because Fern didn't want to tell me. He said, "Oh, we'll have a guest, but I won't tell who it is." So, but yeah, even though he apparently has a bad taste if it comes to virtual cameras, he has always a wonderful taste with guests and especially with you, Christina. So thank you all. And this one's for today. Bye bye till next time. And I think we'll end the broadcast here. And the broadcast.